Torben came to walk Eione home. However, Sena decided to stay in the stables a little longer. She was lost in thought about her sister's words. She understood what Eione meant. However, if she could go back to Valimerence, Sena believed she would.
Hello, you must be Sena.
Sena started at the deep voice and turned to see the man Jorron had been speaking to days ago. Since then, she had seen them speak frequently, and Jorron informed her this was his younger brother. She replied with a polite smile.
It wasn't my intention to startle you. My name's Aden. I'm Jorron's brother,
he continued. Sena could tell from his friendly and inviting demeanor, Aden was much less stern than his older brother. Now, seeing him up close, she could tell he was younger, and although Aden was slightly taller, he was leaner than Jorron's strong build. Would you like to hold a puppy? Sena offered, lifting the one she favored. Aden took the sleepy animal and sat across from Sena.
I only arrived back recently. These little ones were just born before I left,
Aden said as he scratched the puppy's back.
They've changed so much in such a little amount of time.
He looked up at Sena.
Nature changes life quickly. However, some don't want to change.
He continued.
My father was a brutal conqueror, but my brother is a peaceful ruler, and some in our tribe have yet to evolve to his ways.
He said pointedly. Do you believe in your brother's ways? Sena asked, watching Aden closely.
I do now.
Aden looked off into the distance.
At one time, I did not. However, after traveling to many lands myself, I know differently now.
He pulled out something from his pocket.
This was given to me on my travels.
He held out a small wooden carving that looked like a mermaid.
My brother tells me you used to look like this.
Sena looked up. A sorrowful look descended upon her, and she nodded, replying, I did. But on land we need legs. I am like you now. She pointed to his long legs.
Do you like being like this?
Aden inquired, gently. Yes, she replied, but softly corrected. But I miss the waters.
I can't give you back your tail, but Jorron and I can teach you to swim with your legs,
he said hopefully. At his suggestion, Sena's mood lightened, and she smiled at the thought of being in the water once again. After speaking for a while longer, Aden suggested he return her home, muttering something about how Jorron wouldn't be happy. The puppies had woken and were following Aden out, causing him to pick them all up and return them to their mother. Sena exited the stables ahead of Aden and breathed in the air. It smelled of burning wood from the lit torches and pine from the forest behind the stable. She turned to look at the dark forest. It was a cloudy night, and a thin fog formed above the ground. She heard footsteps from the forest running towards her, and a boy cried out. I saw a Valkyrie in the woods, he yelled, running past her as fast as he could. Out of the corner of her eye, Sena saw a glare within the forest, and she swore she saw a figure moving. She ran towards it, and a voice seemed to call to her. It was faint, within the back of her mind and grew clearer as she neared the forest. Soon she was within the dense woodland, blindly following the voice. Sena could almost taste the magic within the air, a metallic tinge searing her nose. She knew she was getting closer to a portal. When she heard the snap of a twig behind her, she called out, "Aden?" before turning to see a seething Osmond. Sena stepped back, opening her mouth to call out, but nothing would come out.
"You sea wench!"
The burly man spat, rage overtaking his face. He ran towards her, and Sena couldn't outrun his large strides. He pushed her to the ground with such force that she couldn't breathe. He grabbed her from behind, gripping his dirty hand over her mouth as he posed a deadly sharp knife to her neck. His breathing was heavy in her ear as he resentfully snarled,
"You ruined my reputation in this tribe. Now I am nothing here. I served King Ivor, and I served King Jorron, but now I'm reduced to dirt in everyone's eyes. You will tell me where your people are, but not here."
Sena shook with fear, his blade cutting into her skin and drawing blood. Osmond let out a crazed laugh and continued,
"I will take you to another tribe, one that is not weak, like Jorron has made these people to be."
He dropped honorifics on Jorron's name.
"Then you will tell us how to get to where your people are."
Sena's heart pounded in her ears, and her mind reeled for what to do. He grabbed her jaw, his strong fingers digging into her skin. The smell of iron rose throughout the air, but it wasn't from her blood. The smell caused Sena to search for the source. She saw a flicker of blue, much closer now, a barely visible shimmering circle. The portal. Although it was small, Sena could feel the familiar energy coursing through her.
"You will beg for your life before I—"
Osmond didn't finish his sentence. He dropped the knife at her feet, and Sena whirled around. Osmond clawed at his throat, the veins in his face protruding as he choked on air. Sena could barely hold the invisible grip, and desperately searched around. Her eyes fell on Jorron, running towards her, Aden following from the forest's opening.
"Sena!"
Jorron yelled, unsheathing his sword as he ran. As the wind passed, the air cleared of magic, and Osmond gasped for air, coughing as he tried to inhale. Osmond turned to Sena in murderous rage, disregarding the shouts of Jorron, who was mere feet away.
"You dare use magic on me?"
Osmond lunged, however Jorron slashed Osmond in the back, the healer's knees falling to the forest floor. Jorron circled to face Osmond, pointing his sword at the center of the traitor's eyes. Aden stood between them and Sena, covering her from the scene.
"No! I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, my king,"
Osmond pitifully pleaded before Jorron's sword came down upon his neck. Osmond's limp body slumped to the ground. Jorron was breathing heavily, a passionate storm of wrath pouring off him as he stood over the body. For a long moment, all was silent, the sound of the calm forest filling Sena's ears. Then, Jorron turned to Sena, putting a hand on Aden's shoulder as he made his way to Sena. He knelt where she had fallen, wrapping his arms around her and kissing her hair.
"My Sena, you are safe,"
he said softly, almost reverently, as he pulled away to look at her, holding her face in front of him.
Are you hurt?
His face contorted with worry. Sena let her tears fall freely, pulling him closer, feeling at peace and restless at the same time. When they had sufficiently gathered themselves, Jorron picked Sena up and carried her back to his house, guards posted at the door. That night, Sena allowed herself to fall asleep in Jorron's arms, safe within his embrace. However, she was woken by a far-off voice calling to her. She slipped out of Jorron's arms and felt a well of emotion as she tried desperately to memorize the lines of his face. Quietly, she rose and walked to the middle of the room. She turned towards Eione, saying her silent goodbyes, and tiptoed to the door. As soon as she opened the door, the air that poured in was saturated in magic. The men guarding the house were paused in time, an unnatural, forced sleep. But it was not Sena's doing. Sena walked towards the forest, her bare feet padding against the damp night ground. She felt the breeze pushing her towards the portal. Finally, enclosed within the deep forest, she found the glowing entrance to Valimerence. She stepped through and was immediately bathed in sunlight. "Sena," she heard a voice say, and turned to see Valimerence, the ethereal elder mage of Queen Ronuit, standing within the clearing surrounding them. She wrapped Sena in a homecoming embrace. "Your journey must have been grave," she said, emotion lacing her voice. "We tried to find you. I'm so sorry it took so long." She hugged tighter. "You are safe now." Sena heard the familiar words. However, she couldn't understand why they didn't bring the same emotions she felt when Jorron said them. The two Valerians walked towards the ocean, and Valimerence broke the silence. Eione did not respond to the call. Sena nodded. She did not wish to leave. Her heart is with them. Before Valimerence could respond, they had reached the ocean, and Sena saw her mother waiting for her. "My child," she cried out, and Sena ran to her. "You're alive. Oh, my child." "Mother, I'm sorry. Sena choked on her tears. "Meee, I'm sorry, Mother. I'm sorry." Her mother's wails broke Sena's heart. "My baby," her mother cried out. They held each other for a long while, gasping for air and bracing through their soul-wrenching grief. When their tears had subsided, Sena spoke. "Eione found love," Sena exclaimed. "She is very happy." Sena's voice broke on the last words. Her mother smiled and wiped Sena's eyes, still holding her close. "And what about you, Sena?" She gave her daughter a knowing look. Sena laughed. What would be a miracle in this predicament, but her laugh turned to tearful exasperation. How could I leave all of you?" she sobbed. "Many leave, dear. I just want you to be happy." Her mother gripped her face. "If you are safe, then you may go wherever you wish." Sena felt a call, not magic from Valimerence, but a call more mysterious, more unexplainable, deeper, and divine. Despite the deep call within her, Sena stayed on Valimerence, and days passed. Although she should be happy, she should be at rest now that she made it back to Valimerence. Sena couldn't understand the peace the Valerians lived in. She couldn't understand the lack of struggle. Everything felt numb, like she wasn't actually living anymore. She once had thought the nightmare started when she left Valimerence, but now she believed the dream was living on Valimerence, and she awoke when she went through the portal. "How are you doing, Sena?" Valimerence said, appearing, seemingly from nowhere. Her powers were beginning to be beyond any other Valerians. Sena lazily turned toward the beautiful mage. "I can't stay here," Sena replied, and continued to ask, "Will I be able to come back?" Even as the words came out, she didn't even care for the answer. "The portal will stay open, for now. However, forces are rising against us. We may need to close the portals. I cannot promise your return forever," Valimerence replied. "I need to go back." Sena's heart beat faster, and she wished to run to the portal. In her urgency to see Jorron, Sena transported to the portal. Before Sena's dizziness ceased, she ran towards it, her bare feet gripping the ground as she propelled herself against the forest floor. The familiar coolness of Jorron's world caressed her skin as she passed through the portal, and her eyes adjusted to the dark night. Sena began running through the forest, desperate to return to Jorron. Her ears perked up at the sound of rustling in the distance. She slowed, and her heart raced at something fast approaching.
"Sena!"
she heard a familiar voice shout. Sena ran towards it, pushing past leaves and dodging trees to see Jorron running towards her. As they collided, he held her to him, his large body engulfing her. He pulled his face away, breathing heavily as he looked at her, as if checking to see if it was truly her. Sena's heart stuttered. Jorron's eyes were haggard, his skin covered in dirt, as if he'd been traveling the whole time she was gone.
"Where?"
He paused in disbelief.
"Where were you?"
He was shaking.
"I thought a tribe took you. I thought you were dead,"
he whispered, as if saying it out loud would make her disappear again. His hands ran over her hair, and Sena's heart broke in realization that Jorron had searched all these days, and that he hadn't given up. I'm sorry, Sena choked out between sobs. No other tribes. She looked down at the forest ground, unable to look at Jorron. He grasped her face with such tenderness. She could feel the calluses on his fingers as he tilted her face up once again. "I went back through the door." Her lips quivered. She waited as he took in what she said. Finally, he responded, his body relaxing slightly.
"You were safe, my Sena."
A contented smile spread on his face, and Sena broke a little further. "Yes, I was safe." She took his face in her hands, brushing his rough beard with the pads of her fingers.
"Why did you come back?"
Jorron asked in a hopeful tone. "Because..." She searched for the words. "Because it may be sunny there." It may be peaceful and familiar, but she hesitated. But there was a light missing. She put her hand on his heart, hoping he understood. At her confession, Jorron crushed her lips to his own and pulled her to him. She melted under his touch, as if, in that moment, all was right. He reluctantly pulled away and whispered,
"You are mine, my Sena, my sweet Sena, my love."
Sena's eyes widened in realization that he had been telling her of his affections the whole time. Sena's heart felt so full, she repeated back to him, "Mine, my Sena," and Jorron let out a loud, rumbling laugh, his beautiful, kind eyes twinkling as he corrected,
"Seti, for a man,"
causing Sena to blush slightly and laugh, repeating, "Seti." Sena and Jorron sat in the Valimerence palace among Vlerifona and Queen Ronuit's other advisors, awaiting the arrival of the Valerian queen. Soon, Earth would start dealings with Valimerence, an alliance that would hold for centuries. Stars, it's gotten late. I hope you enjoyed that story. Don't be afraid of adventure. Yes, bad things can happen, but they can happen even if you're not enjoying life. You never know where life is going to take you. But for now, you best get home before you can't find the portal back. Come back anytime